Aging is living. It's how we move through life, and that's what makes it so incredibly interesting. But you wouldn't know it from all the hand-wringing going on about it. What's most people's most optimistic take on the subject? Well, it beats the alternative. What does that saying actually mean? The only thing worse than being old is being dead. I used to feel the same way. What was I mostly worried about? What were some of my assumptions? Well, I thought I might end up drooling under a bad Van Gogh print in some grim institutional hallway, until I learned that the percentage of Americans over 65 in nursing homes is 4%, and it's dropping. I figured that the odds of getting dementia or serious memory loss were close to inevitable if I lived long enough. The fact is that Alzheimer's rates are dropping fast. The total number of cases is growing because there's more older people in the population, but the odds of anyone in this room being diagnosed with dementia are getting lower and lower, and people are being diagnosed at later ages. I also assumed that old people were depressed because they were old and they were going to die soon. It turns out that the longer people live, the less we fear dying, and that people are happiest at the beginnings and the ends of their lives. It's called the U-curve of happiness, and it's been borne out by dozens of studies around the world. As we turn 80, we get better at dealing with negative emotions like anger and envy and fear. You don't have to be a Buddhist, right, or a billionaire. The curve is a function of the way aging itself affects the brain. You know, nobody comes down with all the conditions associated with aging, but no one escapes all of them either. But even when chronic conditions pile up, most older people step in on their neighbors, they function in the world, they enjoy their lives. Many of the oldest old function well and enjoy their lives not by avoiding illness, but despite it. So getting older started to look a lot better, and you know that was real and significant. I mean, it was pretty obvious that hitting 90 was going to be different from the grim slide into depression, dementia, and puffy white shoes of my nightmares. I am still worried about the shoes. But I still had a lot of work to do. I had to acknowledge and start letting go of the prejudices about aging that had been drummed into me since childhood. Old people are incompetent. Wrinkles are ugly. It's sad to be old. Older people can be the most ageist of all because we've had a lifetime to internalize those ideas and never thought to challenge them. And banishing them is infinitely harder, as I am reminded on a daily basis. It's a work in progress. What was the hardest prejudice to let go of? Against myself, my own future older self. Ageism takes root in denial. Our reluctance to admit that we are aging, we're going to get old, we might even be old. And this denial takes all kinds of forms, from cutesy sayings like she's 83 years young to the frozen faces of newscasters and Real Housewives. It is uncomfortable to be called out as older until we quit being embarrassed about it. Confronting unconscious bias is uncomfortable, and it doesn't come naturally. You can tie a baby elephant up with a rope, and it soon learns that it's captive. The same rope does the job when the elephant is the size of a Volkswagen, and the rope pulls tighter over time. As age-related stereotypes become more relevant, people tend to act as though they were accurate, and that creates self-fulfilling stereotypes. Unless we challenge the underlying message that to age is to lose value as a human being, it becomes part of our identity. That's internalized ageism. It's why, like the elephant, we collude in our own disempowerment and stay tethered. Ageism is to age what racism is to race. Both are socially constructed ideas. That means we make them up. And they're not about how we look. They're about what people in power want our appearance to mean. We encounter ageism anytime someone assumes that we're too old for something, a task, a relationship, a haircut, instead of finding out who we are and what we're capable of, or too young. Ageism cuts both ways, right? I began to see ageism everywhere when old friends cringed at public mention of how long they'd known each other instead of delighting in it. In those marketing checklists, that go like 18 to 23 and 23 to 33, and then they stop at 65, as though everyone over 65 buys the same crud and does the same things. It is ageist to assume that older people are wise or frail, or to criticize millennials for being selfish or needing their hands held, right? It's any judgment about a person or group of people based on how old we think they are. When a car is hard to get out of, or we can't open the damn jar, or there's no handrail, we tend to blame ourselves. We think I should be more limber or stronger or better prepared. We blame our own aging instead of the discrimination that makes those barriers acceptable and the ageism that makes those natural transitions shameful. When we dye our hair just to cover the gray, or fudge or lie about our age, or leave early accomplishments off our resumes, we reinforce age shame. Those strategies are really effective. I completely understand why so many of us engage in them. No judgment, I swear. But like a gay person passing for straight, or a person of color passing for white, they're not good for us, and they give a pass to the discrimination that makes those strategies necessary. It is not the passage of time that makes getting older so much harder than it has to be. It is ageism. And the sooner we see this prejudice at work in ourselves and our place in the world, the easier it is to come up with alternative, more positive, and more accurate narratives. The benefits are real and substantive. People with more positive feelings towards aging do better on memory tests, they walk faster, they heal quicker, and they live longer. And not just a little bit longer either, 7.5 years longer, and they live better. So I realized that much of what I knew about aging was wrong, that staying in the dark serves powerful social and economic and political forces that do not serve mine, and that seeing clearly is healthier and happier. And yet ageism is just beginning to bleep onto our cultural radar. It is the last socially sanctioned prejudice, right? And so, you know, who even blinks when older people are described as helpless or useless, right? Even though we know that racist and sexist comments aren't okay anymore. Like gender and race, age is a criterion for diversity. And if we don't want to live in a society where what we look guarantees our access to opportunity, then gray hair and wrinkles count. It's a long way from denial to acceptance, and even further to embrace. So I smiled when I came across geriatrician Joanne Lynn's description of herself as an old person in training and realized that's what I had become. I know I'm not young, I don't see myself as old, and I know a lot of us feel the same way. And the sooner we can make that imaginative leap, the better. Becoming an old person in training connects you to your older self, your future self, at whatever remove you're comfortable with. It can be a distant speck on that horizon. It removes that us versus them problem, that otherness that powers all prejudice, and it derails shame and self-loathing and frees us to become our full selves, age full, not ageless, because our years are what make us us. Until we confront ageism, it will pit us against each other, old versus young. It will rob society of an incredible accrual of knowledge and experience, and it will poison our futures by framing longer lives as problems instead of the incredible accomplishments and opportunities that it also represents. Suppose we stepped off this hamster wheel of age denial and caught our breath and began to challenge the ways in which ageism segregates us and damages us and diminishes our prospects. Suppose we saw, older people as this incredible asset, social capital, and started to exploit it, right? Suppose we acknowledged that elders contribute to society, not just in conventional economic terms, in greater numbers than ever, but also in countless ways that are harder to measure, but just as important. And let's reflect deeply on what this new longevity means to us, right, individually and collectively, and how we can help roles and institutions evolve to support it. Some places to start. Look for reasons that you are ageist instead of for evidence that you're not. We are all biased some of the time, and we can't challenge bias unless we're aware of it. Age segregation cuts us off from most of humanity. If you don't know a lot of people much older or younger than you, think of something you like to do and find an age-diverse group to do it with. Don't stay home just because you'll stick out. Train yourself to notice if everyone in the room is the same age, and unless there's a really good reason, speak up about it. Never assume that someone is too old or too young to weigh in on a topic or assume a responsibility. If you're feeling ambitious, start a consciousness-raising group. This powerful tool ignited the women's movement in the 1960s and 70s because through it, women realized that what they had been thinking of as personal problems were actually widely shared collective problems that required us to mobilize together to fight them. Expect pushback. Social change is unsettling. It's worth it. What kind of world do we want our children, who may well live to be 100, to inherit? In the 20th century, the civil rights and women's movements woke us up to entrenched systems of sexism and racism around us. More recently, activists have brought ableism and transphobia and homophobia into the streets and the courts. It is high time to add ageism to that list, right, and to mobilize against discrimination on the basis of age. If age equality is here to stay, if marriage equality is here to stay, why not age equality? If gay pride has gone mainstream, why not age pride? Longevity is here to stay. Everyone is old or future old. Unless we put an end to it, ageism will oppress us all. A movement to end ageism is underway. I'm in it, and I hope you will join me. Thank you.